What's happening, tabletop gamers? My name is LeunameGames. Welcome back to LeunameGames. Today we're going to learn how to play the 2 to 5 player set collecting game Tokaido by Antoine Bauza and published by Funforge. In Tokaido, players are all travelers in the old days of Japan, and they're all on a journey along the famous coastal road to see beautiful sceneries, taste amazing foods, and meet amazing people, and so much more, as they go on the journey of a lifetime to make the ultimate experience possible as they travel from Kyoto to Edo. Let's get to the table, and let's see what's in the box. To set up the game, place the game board in the center of your playing area. Then take all of the achievement cards, which you can tell because they have a blue and a yellow back, and just set them aside for now. They will be referred to later. Shuffle the meal, encounter, hot spring, and souvenir decks, and then place them on their appropriate spaces, like this. Separate the panorama cards according to their type, and then place them in their respective locations, and making sure that the cards are sorted by their numbers, going from lowest to highest. Take the coins that are in the game and set them off to the side to form a reserve. Have each player choose what color they want to be, and they will receive their appropriated meeple, their scoring token, and their character token. I will be setting up for a 5-player game, so I will use all of these. Any extras can be put back in the box. They will not be used. Place all of these scoring tokens on the 0 space of the scoring track. Have each player randomly take 2 tiles from the stack, look at them in secret, and then choose which character they will want to play as. When the player chooses their character, they will place it in front of them, and then take their appropriate token and place it in the little hole in the top left corner. This is basically just so that everybody will know that this is your traveler. The other one that you didn't pick will simply be returned to the stack. There are 2 things you'll need to know about each character. First is the coins up here, is the amount of coins that you will start with. For example, Mitsukuni will start with 6 coins. The second are these symbols down here. This is your character's special ability. To save time, I'm not going to go over every single character's ability in this game. However, there is a very beautifully done illustration in the back of the rulebook that easily explains each of the character's abilities if you have any questions. Finally, take all of the player's pawns, shuffle it, and then randomly place each player's pawn, starting in the back, on the starting in of the board, going from the back to the front. This will basically determine who will be going first in the game. Whoever is placed furthest back from the path and going up to the front will be the player order. However, this will only apply just to start the game. Once you have done everything I have previously stated, you are ready to begin. The game takes place over 4 days. Each day revolves around the players moving up the road up to the next inn, and then interacting with all the various locations they stop at along the road. There are several different locations along the road, and the locations either give you points or coins. But there's a few things you'll need to keep in mind when it comes to moving. First of all, the player whose turn it is to move is the player who is furthest back on the road. For example, in the start of the game here, green is the furthest back on the road, so green gets to move. Second, when you move, you can only move forward down the road. For example, I could take this meeple if this was my color, and I could move it down the road to here. However, when it comes to my turn again, I could not then decide to go back over to here. Any spaces that you skip over when you move are lost. You also cannot move to a space that already has another player's traveler in that location. There is a potential exception here, which is these double dots, which I will get to later on. And finally, when you move, you can move to any spot you want to as long as it's not covered, up to the next inn. You can never go past the next inn. When it's your turn to move, you will then take your traveler and you can move it to any space that is unoccupied on the board up to the next available inn. There are many different locations that you can travel to, and I will explain each of these now. Whenever you decide to stop at a shop, you will draw the top 3 cards of the souvenir deck. You will then take those cards, flip them up, and place those cards in front of you. These are the available souvenirs that you have the option to buy this turn. There are 4 different souvenirs that are in the game: art, small objects, clothes, and food. One thing to keep in mind though, you are only allowed to go to a shop if you have at least 1 coin in your possession. If you do not have any coins, you are not allowed to stop at the shop. When you stop at a shop, you will draw the top 3 cards of the souvenir deck. You then have the option to buy any number of these as long as you are able to pay the cost shown on the bottom corner. Keep in mind, you don't have to buy any of the cards showing if you don't want to. If you, however, do decide to buy souvenirs, you will pay the appropriate amount of coins that they cost in total back to the supply, and you will immediately take those and place them in front of you and immediately score them. The way you score souvenirs is basically by collecting them in sets. So once you collect a souvenir, you are essentially starting a souvenir set. When you buy a souvenir of one type, you immediately score 1 point. Once you buy a second souvenir that is a different symbol, you immediately score 3 points. A third souvenir with a different symbol scores you 5, and a fourth souvenir of a different symbol scores you 7. You'll be able to figure out how many points you score for each one because it actually displays them in the right corner of each of the souvenir cards. Anytime you buy a souvenir that already matches one of the symbols that you already have, you are starting a new set and you score 1 point. You can, however, add on to new sets by purchasing souvenirs that have different symbols and scoring them like I explained before. The image that is shown on the different souvenirs does not matter. What matters is the symbols in the bottom right corner. If you decide to stop at a hot spring spot, you immediately draw the top card of the hot spring deck and place it in front of you. This will automatically score you either 2 or 3 points, which you immediately move on the score track. Make sure to keep those cards in front of you as they will become important at the end of the game. If you go to an encounter space represented by a traveler, you will draw the top card of the encounter deck and you will place it in front of you. You will gain whatever benefit that is shown on that encounter card. There are 7 different encounters that come with the game, and they all provide different benefits. The Samurai immediately scores you 3 points. Miku allows you to donate 1 coin from the supply to the temple, which I will get to in a minute. Kuj gets you 3 coins. Shokunin lets you draw the top card of the souvenir stack, and you get to keep it for free, immediately scoring it when you do so. And then finally, there's Anebito. When you draw Anebito's card, immediately look at the bottom color on the bottom of the cards and draw the appropriate panorama card at the appropriate level that you are going to be adding on. I will talk more about the panoramas later on. No matter which encounter you end up drawing, you will always keep the cards that you drew in front of you. If you decide that you're going to stop at a farm, you immediately receive 3 coins. Take those coins and place them in your personal supply. If you decide to stop at a temple, you have the option of paying 1 to 3 coins to the temple. You will choose the amount of coins you want to pay to the temple and place them on the temple labeled by your color. You immediately score 1 point for each coin that you donated. Finally, there's the 3 sceneries: the hills, the mountains, and the ocean. If you decide to stop at one of these panorama spots, you immediately will draw the panorama card that matches what you're at, and you'll draw the amount that is depending on where you are at currently with your panorama. For example, if you were to go to the hills panorama and you have not started the hills yet, you will draw the 1 point card of the panorama and place it in front of you, immediately scoring 1 point. If on a later turn you stop at a panorama spot of one that you've already started, you will take the next panorama card in order, going from lowest to highest and placing it in front of you, immediately scoring its points. For example, if I had already started this hills panorama and I go here, I drew the second card because it was the next one up, and I would immediately score 2 points. Similarly, if I were to move to a mountain panorama and I already have it started, I would draw the next number in the line and place it in the panorama, immediately scoring its points. In this case, for the mountain, it would be the 3-point card because I already have the 1 and the 2-point cards. If you were the first player to ever complete the appropriate panorama, you will then take the appropriate bonus card, place it in front of you, immediately scoring the points for the bonus card as well. Other players can still complete that panorama as well, but they will not be able to get the bonus card. Keep in mind, you can only have one panorama of each type. Whenever you enter the inn, what will happen is a little bit different depending on whether you're the first player in or not. When you are the first player to enter the inn, you will draw the number of cards from the top of the meal deck equal to the number of players plus 1. For example, in a 5-player game, you would draw the top 6 cards of the meal deck. You will then look at those meal cards in secret and then choose, if you want, which of these meal cards you would like to buy. If you would like to buy one of these meal cards, you'd pay the appropriate cost of those meal cards back to the supply, and you will immediately place those cards, or the card that you bought rather, in front of you, immediately scoring its points. The remaining cards will be set face down on the side here next to the meal deck. And the other players that move into the inn will simply just look at the remaining cards that are left, choose which one they want to buy, if they want to buy any at all, pay the appropriate cost, and then score the points, placing the cards in front of them. If you move into the inn and you find, when looking at the meal cards, that there is a card that you cannot afford, or that you simply do not want the meal cards that are present, you do not have to buy any meal cards. One thing to keep in mind, however, is that once you buy a food card, you cannot have a duplicate of that food card for the rest of the game. For example, if when I go to the first inn and I decide to buy a tofu, I cannot at any of the other inns in the game decide to buy another tofu. One thing to keep in mind when going into the inn is that when you move in, you always take the first available spot in the inn. For example, I was the first one to go in the inn, so I would take this first spot. This player then would go into the inn, they take the second spot, and so on and so forth. Once all the players are in the inn and all the cards have been dealt with, you will then proceed to the next day, starting with the player who is furthest back from the road and going on until you reach the next inn. You will continue to travel along the road for a total of 4 days, and on the final day you will reach Edo, right over here at the end of the board, and once everybody reaches here, the game will end. Whenever the game ends, there are a series of bonuses that will be awarded. The bonuses to be awarded will come in the form of these cards, as well as the temple bonus up here. The souvenir bonus goes to the player who has the most souvenir cards. That player will receive this card and score 3 points. The hot springs card goes to the player who has gotten the most hot springs, immediately scoring 3 points, just like the other one. The player with the most encounter cards receives the encounter bonus, scoring 3 points immediately, and the player who has spent the most money on their meals at the end of the game will score 3 points for the meal bonus card. Finally, you will award the bonuses for the temple. Whoever donated the most money to the temple will score 10 points. The second most will score 7 points, and so on. Players who have not donated any coins to the temple do not score anything. After all the points are awarded, whoever has the most points is the winner. In the case of a tie, the tied player with the most bonus cards will win. That's basically it, but there's a couple other things you want to know before starting your first game. The double spaces. Double spaces look like this. They have a divided along the dot. They are only to be used in a 4 or 5 player game. When a player goes to stop at a location that has a double space, they must first occupy the space closest to the road. The next player who stops there then occupies the double space. When considering who's furthest back on the road, the double space counts as further back than on the main road. In this example, purple is considered the furthest back from the road because they're on the double space and there is nobody behind them, so it will be purple's turn. In this example, however, even though purple is on a double space, blue is further behind them on the road, so it will be blue's turn. There are also 4 different variants that you can play with, and the 4 variants are Journey of Initiation. Journey of Initiation is meant to be a simpler version of the game in which instead of having each individual player having a character with special abilities, you remove all the character tiles and just give everybody 7 coins to start the game. Return Trip. Normally when you play this game, the players start in Kyoto and travel east to Edo. In the return trip, you actually will start at Edo and travel back to Kyoto. The rules otherwise remain the same. Gastronomy. Gastronomy means when arriving at the inns, the first player will draw the number of meal cards equal to the number of players rather than the number of players plus 1. Meaning that the players will have fewer options when arriving at the inn, making arrival at the inn much more tactical. Preparations. When setting up the game, the players furthest to the back of the road usually have more options when choosing where to go. The preparations variant will basically try to compensate for that by having the first 2 players start with 1 less coin, the 3rd player, if there is one, keeping their starting amount, the 4th player, if there is one, starts with an extra coin, and then finally, the 5th player, if there is one, will start with 2 extra coins. 2-player rules. Whenever you're going to play a game with just 2 players, the rules slightly differ. First, there is a 3rd neutral player, and it can be of any color, that must be added to the starting inn. Once again, determining the order of the 3 travelers at random. Second, just like the travelers controlled by the players, the neutral player also must be moved whenever he is the last player in the line. Whichever player is in the lead gets to decide where the neutral player moves to. And that's everything you need to know in order to play Tokaido. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. If you want to learn my thoughts on Tokaido, or if you want to know how to play more games, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more tutorials, reviews, and unboxings. Thank you all as always so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.